Okay, we're all ready. Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Shavuos Daf Daled. Tough blot tonight. I know we have this real deep positive attachment to Ribui, Mute, Ribui, and Klalu Pradu Klal. I have an affinity for them. I can tell you personally. No sarcasm noted. But we're going to learn one of those. It's actually not a hard one. We've had harder, that's for sure. And right now, we're actually in the midst of a sugya of trying to fix a stira within Rav Yochanan. Toward the top of the page, we had said that there was a kasha de Rav Yochanan ad Rav Yochanan, that on the one hand, our Mishnah, when we learned it like Rabbi Shmuel, was of the opinion, like halacha kistam Mishnah, like Rabbi Shmuel, that that lav she'ein bo maisa is loken alav. But the problem was that we saw elsewhere that Rav Yochanan didn't hold that way. So we're trying to find another stam Mishnah that lav shein bo maisa is ein loken alav. That's what we're seeking, because then we won't have a stira within Rav Yochanan. But if Rav Yochanan holds that it holds like a stam Mishnah, if our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shmuel, and if Rabbi Shmuel holds that stam Mishnah that lav shein bo maisa is loken alav, then we have a stira. So 2 lines from the bottom, we find another stam Mishnah that seemingly indicates lav shein bo maisa ein loken alav, which would again remove our stira. Ella says the Gemara 2 lines from the bottom. Hi stama ashkach. We found another stam Mishnah. Let's say someone says shvua shelo ochel kikarzu. If a person makes a shvua that they will not eat this loaf of bread, and they double down shvua shelo ochlena, and then ve'achla. So they said 2 things that they weren't going to do, and then they did both of those things, which was one action. He ate what he said he wouldn't eat, but he promised twice that he wouldn't eat. So the halacha is on the top of Daled Amud Aleph, top words, Eino chayiv ela achas, you're only chayiv on one of those, because that second shavua of shavua shelo ochlena is the same as shavua shelo ochel kikarzu. It's just a double language. You're saying the same, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to consume this. You say, it's the same thing. And there's really nothing to say that you'd get punished more than once. You only be chayiv once. And says the Gemara, Zohi shvuas bitui. This is the type of promise that a person makes, a verbal promise. Shechayavan al zadona makos al shigagasa korban oleviyore. That if one did so bezadon on purpose, they are chayav malkos. If they did so b'shogeg, they're going to be chayav a korban oleviyore. As we discussed in our Mishnah, the korban oleviyore is a korban that's dependent on how wealthy you are. The wealthier you are, the bigger the animal. The poorer you are, the closer you get to, let's say, even a flour type of korban. And as well, Zohi dechayavin al zadona makos, that is, in that case, let's talk about that. Aval, our case was lo ochel. Aval ochel velo ochal lo laki. Remember that the way that this brisa started was shuvah shelo ochel. There we said that al zadona makos ve'al shigagaso korban. Here, if it's the reverse, not saying I'm not going to eat, but if a person says aval ochel and then he didn't eat, lo lucky. So this is our Mishnah that supports Rav Yochanan. What do we see over here? It's a lav she'ein bo maisa, and do you get malkos? No. Beautiful. We solved our Rav Yochanan problem. We know that Rav Yochanan expressly held in another case of shvua she'ochel ki karzu, which we saw 1/3 of the way down on Gimel Amud Aleph, that there he was of the opinion of shvua she'ein bo, lav she'ein bo malkos ein loken alav. But our Mishnah seemed to say otherwise. Says the Gemara, don't worry, we have a new Mishnah. We're good. Kaftor b'ferach, everything is beautiful. Nothing to be concerned about. So says the Gemara, look, it feels like we're playing a game. Like, who can find a stam Mishnah like Rav Yochanan? So says the Gemara, Michti, hai stama v'hai stama. My chazi da'avid ki hai stama, le'avid ki hai stama. We're just playing a game here. I found one like Rav Yochanan. I found one not like Rav Yochanan. It's not a game. What's a shita? What are we trying to play around with? I don't understand. Why is it that our initial assumption of our Mishnah, when we learn it like Rabbi Shmuel, is that it's stam Mishnah like Rabbi Shmuel? Stam Mishnah is going to be the halacha and lav she'ein bo maisa loken alav. And then we find another one that says ein loken alav. Yeah, how do you do that? Says the Gemara. If you take your question a little bit deeper, you'll find that it's not just that we're picking and choosing with stam mishnayos, but really, Rebbe Gufei. How could it be that two stam mishnayos, they're written by the same person. Our mishnayos were edited and collated and collected by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in the early 200s of our common era. And it seemed to be that he is Soser himself. Forget about Rav Yochanan. Our Mishnah on Daf Beis, if we learn it like Rabbi Shmuel, is Lav Shein Bo Maisa is Lokin Alav. And the Bryce at the bottom of this page, 2 lines from the bottom, which we'll see later in this Masechta a couple more times, says Lav Shein Bo Maisa Ein Lokin Alav. That's, forget Kasha the Rabbi Yochanan, it's Kasha the Rebbe of the Rebbe. How can he have two Stam Mishnayos that are saying opposite things? It says the Gemara, Givaldik Kasha. And the Gemara answers 7 lines down. Ella, Me Ikara. Initially, when Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wrote the Mishnah on Daf Beis, Savar Lav Shein Bo Maisa Lokin Alav Usasama. He held initially, like Rabbi Shmuel Taka, that you're right, Alav Shein Bo Maisa. If I say, like we see at the top of this page, Ochel, Shvua that I'm going to eat, and then I don't eat, so the halacha is he says you get Malkos. That's our Stam Mishnah on Daf Beis. However, V'hadar Savar, later on Daf Chaf Aleph, when this Mishnah is quoted again in the 20 blot, he changed his mind. And remember that there were no blot at that time like this. This could have been a couple of hours. We don't know what happened in this short span of time. But V'hadar Savar, no, I changed my mind. Ein Lokin Alav Usasama. So we had 2 Stam Mishnahs, one like his first Shita, one like his second Shita. First one said Lokin Alav. Second one said Ein Lokin Alav. Umishnah lo zazim mimakoma. And even though it's true, he changed his mind. And really, we hold Lav Shein Bo Maisa Ein Lokin Alav. But still, we're not going to edit the first Mishnah on Daf Beis. Unbelievable. Why would we not edit the Mishnah on Daf Beis? Okay.
So, according to Rashi, it's not a couple hours.
I'm just, yeah.
I mean, if I can paraphrase, you couldn't get the genie back in the bottle.
What does that mean?
Meaning that mission had already been learned.
So, what are you going to do?
If you're wise, you'll understand that.
What happened later?
Yeah. That
Sure. Of course, I'm being tongue-in-cheek when I say a couple of hours, but the point is that it would have made sense. We see this all the time. No, chasur mechzor v'hachik tani. It was a mistake. But that's not what we say here. So this goes to methodologies in learning. Why is it that sometimes we're going to edit a Mishnah and sometimes we're not going to edit it? Okay, that's fair. But I understand your point as well, David.
Not my point. Rashi.
Yeah. I mean, the point you're raising. What's the exact opposite?
Exact opposite.
What'd you say?
These Mishnayos are exact opposites of each other.
Oh, yeah, perfectly opposite.
A little edit.
Correct.
Exact opposite.
Correct. And sometimes we do say, don't worry, lo kasha, ha X and ha Y.
Right.
So why don't we say that here? Because we have Rabbi Shmuel who holds one and other Tanaim hold the other way. We could have done that and we didn't. Again, methodologies and because what? Right, we do that all the time. Lo kasha, there's 2 Mishnayos that are so Harab Yehuda, Harab Shimon. Either way, this kind of answers up that this second Mishnah is really correct, right? And that means that Rabbi Yochanan's real psak is like the second Mishnah of Lav Shein Bo Maisa Ein Lokin Alav, which means there's no stira in Rabbi Yochanan, which is beautiful. Now we're really doing well on the Rabbi Yochanan piece. Says the Gemara, B'mayu Kimta. How did we initially try to understand our Gemara? On the top of Gimel Amud Beit, we actually said Rabbi Shmuel Ula Malkos. We said it's like Rabbi Shmuel, and we're talking about Malkos. I Maros Negoim My Malkos Ika. By looking at Negoim, by the Isurim by the Metzias of a Nega, where would there be Malkos? Says the Gemara, B'kotzetz Beharaso. If somebody cuts off a Behara, they cut off one of their lesions. Uche Rebbe Avin Amar Rebbe La. Damar of Avin Amar Rebbe La. Kol Makom Shnemar Hishomer Pen Ve'al Einu Elalo Sasei. And that's the low, that you're not allowed to cut off. It's actually Hishomer Benega Hatzoras Lishmor Me'od. That's what the pasuk says in Dvarim Chaf Daled. So that Hishomer means that there's a lav to remove a nega, and if you do remove that nega, you're chayav malkos. Yitzio Shabbos my malkos ika. But if you're going to say that's true, that our Mishnah on Daf Beis Rabbi Shmuel is all talking about malkos, there's another problem, and the problem is that by Shabbos we don't really have malkos. Why not? Because says the Gemara, Lav shenitan lazharas misas bezdinhu. When one violates one of the 39 malachos, avos or toldos, So what direction are you going in? It's not a good one. It's a misas bezdin direction. And v'chol lav shenitan latzoros misas bezdin ein loken alav. So if we're going to establish our Mishnah like Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel says we're talking about Malkos, but by Shabbos there are no Malkos. By Shabbos it's a lav shenitan latzoros misas bezdin. Person takes nail clippers on Shabbos and cuts his nails. There's no Malkos. You're dead. There's no, you're in the wrong genre of Isurim. This isn't like, don't eat that sheretz. This isn't like, I don't know, any other Isur. We're talking about Malkos. There's no Malkos by Shabbos. So how could Rabbi Shmuel be right in our Mishnah? Says the Gemara, Chidish atzum v'nifla. Mishum hachi mukmina ki Rabbi Shmuel. The Amar, lav shenitzan lazaras misas bezden, taka loken alav. You do have Malkos. So this is a huge chiddush, is that, let's say that I clip my toenails with a clipper. Do it with your hands, it might be. Poskim discuss this. If a woman, this is gross, fair warning, gross. If a woman forgot to cut her nails before Shabbos starts, and she has to go to the mikvah, so if you have a goy bite your nails off, it's a shvus, b'makom mitzvah, mutter. Unbelievable. It's incredible. You got to be really good friends with somebody to be biting their nails. So if that doesn't work, and this is what we would do, if a woman forgot to clean her nails out and really cut them, you really want to get them down because of chatzitza and other concerns. So then what we would just do is really do a good job of a woman should just really clean out her nails well, make sure not to cause any bleeding, but really try to get all of the extras off of the nail. You can't, if you use a clear knot as its own shaila, because it might be muksa, it might be uvdin dechol, but you can use your finger and do a really good job. And the problem is what happens when you get with your last nail. With your last nail, you have no other nails. So, okay, you got to figure it out. Just get clever. But anyways, over here, what we see is that there are malkos in this case. So that's how Rabbi Shmuel can explain up our Mishnah that all the cases have malkos. By the nega, it's the hishamer. And by Shabbos, he holds that the lav shenitan lasharas misas bezdin, you're still chayiv. So far, so good. Halfway down up until this point, that's our Mishnah according to Rabbi Shmuel. Halav hachi, says the Gemara, if it were not to be that we held like Rabbi Shmuel, kaima ki Rabbi Akiva, could we ever have held like Rabbi Akiva? That can't be, because kasha yediyas. That was a question that we raised on the very bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph, because we said, and this is 4 lines from the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph, that Rabbi Akiva, if our Mishnah was Rabbi Akiva, he holds that Helam Tuma is when you're chayiv, but you're not chayiv on Helam Mikdash. Is that if a person goes into the Mikdash behelam, they forgot that they were tamei. You're not chayiv in that case. So we said Rabbi Akiva can't be our Mishnah because there's no chiyuv in all 4 cases. There's only a chiyuv in 3 out of the 4 cases of Yediyas Atuma. So Kashi Yediyas. So says the Gemara, well, why can't we just answer for Rabbi Akiva the same way we just answered for Rabbi Shmuel? Lav Amras Rabbi Shmuel, he ula Malkos. Rabbi Akiva nami ula Malkos. Big deal. Why can't we say that we're talking about Malkos? Says the Gemara, Ihachi, if that's true, Yedias, our Mishnah shouldn't have said Yedias. If all 4 cases were going to be cases of Malkos, it should have said Hasros mi baile. Says the Gemara, don't worry, halo kasha. Tani, Yedios de Hasros. And yes, there would taka be Hasra in all 4 cases. Yahachi, says the Gemara, that's not possible. You can't say that within Yedios Tumos that there's going to be 4 Isurim, because some of the permutations of the cases where you had no knowledge on the front end, if you didn't know you were Tameh in the beginning, you can't be Chayav Malkos. There's no Ha'alama. You didn't know. Somebody else told you later. They saw you standing on a grave. You didn't know. So it says the Gemara, Yachi Shtayim Shein Arba, no, Tartu Dahavyan. Because 2 of the permutations of Yediyas Shabbos is where you didn't know before. One is where you didn't know before and didn't know after. One is where you didn't know before and you did know after. But if you don't know before, how can you possibly be Chayiv? It's Shtayim Shein Shtayim. It's not Shtayim Shein Arba. Visu, and furthermore, we have another problem, 2/3 of the way down. As sheyesh ba Yediyas betchila v'Yediyah besov helam ben time. So says the Gemara, if you had Yediyah before and you had Yediyah after, but there was ha'alama lemalkos, ma'avidete. What does that mean? That nobody warned you then. You didn't know that you did anything wrong. You can't be chayiv malkos even in that case. There's no way we're getting to all 4 with Rabbi Akiva. Visu, and furthermore, Harei zeh be'ola v'yored. Our Mishnah says that with some of the Adiyah Shabbos, you're chayav a korban ola v'yored. By definition, when are you chayav a korban? B'shogeg. There's no way to get to come out any of the cases according to Rabbi Akiva. Ella says the Gemara Amar of Yosef. You're right. You're right. How do we understand our Mishnah? It's not like Rabbi Shmuel, and it's not like Rabbi Akiva, but it's Rebbe. V'nasiv la aliba de Tanoi. And he holds that different parts of our Mishnah are like different other anonymous Tanoim, but he's going to say their names now. B'yadiyas nasiv la Rabbi Shmuel. When it comes to Yadiyas, he holds like Rabbi Shmuel. B'Shavuos, when it comes to the Shavuos Shtayin Shein Arba, nasiv la Rabbi Akiva. And that is how he holds in both of those cases. So that's what the Gemara says is a little bit of a chiddush. So Rashi, 8 lines from the bottom, Dibra Maskal Hachi Garsin B'Shavuos nasiv la Rabbi Akiva, B'Yadiyas nasiv la Rabbi Shmuel. V'lo mistam sasminhu. It's actually not a stam Mishnah anymore. Really, it's of course, Rebbe authored it, but here's the change in girsa of our Mishnah. El Hachi Kamar. Rashi says, Shavuos l'Rebbe Akiva, Shtaim Shein Arba. Add the names into our Mishnah. And the Rabbi Shmuel, Shtaim Shein Arba. So the Gemara says we have to, and Yediyas, the Rabbi Shmuel, Shtaim Shein Arba. What? You're editing the Mishnah, like we just said we should have done before, right? So again, how do we know when these things happen? I have no idea. So that's how he now understands our Mishnah. And Amar Rav Ashi, Amrisa l'shmaisa kamid Rav Kahana. He was saying this idea of Rav Yosef in front of Rav Kahana, the Amar Li, and Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, Lo tema, don't say that what Rav Yosef meant was Rebbe Nasiv la aliba de tanoi v'leilo svirale. Don't say he was just quoting other shitas, but he didn't hold that way. El Rebbe taime denav shema farish. It was also saying his own reason, and let's prove it. Tanya. Minayin she'eno chayev. Ela al sheyesh ba yadiyah betchila b'yadiyah b'sof helam ben time. How do we know, and we'll see soon that this is Rabbi Akiva Shita, how do we know that you're going to be held accountable under those circumstances? That you had yadiyah before and yadiyah after, but not in the middle. Talmud lomar v'ne'elam v'ne'elam shnei pa'amim. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Omer eno tzarech. I agree with you. I'm asking. We hold the same halacha. I just disagree with your methodologies. It's not from the double words, v'ne'elam. Harehu Omer, because the pasuk says, turning to the top of Dalet Amud Beis, and we'll be stopping most of the way down on Dalet Amud Beis. V'ne'elam michlal diyoda. That part's already clear. I don't need you to teach me the same halacha twice. V'ne'elam means that he forgot. You forgot what? That you were already tameh. So why does it have to say v'ne'elam twice? V'ne'elam one time is michlal diyoda. It means that you knew initially and you forgot, Pasha. You forgot. Then another pasuk says v'hu yoda harei kan shtei yediyos. So I don't need v'ne'elam, but I agree with you. Im kain, according to Rabbi Matam Lomer v'ne'elam lechayev al he'elam tuma ve'al he'elam mikdash, and this actually aligns with the shita of Rabbi Shmuel. So Ashkechan says the Gemara, b'yediyos, in regards to yediyos tuma de'islei taimu denafshei. When it comes to yediyos tuma, he doesn't agree with Rabbi Akiva. He has his own svara that does happen to align with Rabbi Shmuel. But Shavuos to Islay Tamed and Afshe Minalan. How do we know by Shavuos that he holds of his own opinion? Says the Gemara, Svarahu. It's logical. Skip the parentheses, 8 lines down. Rabbi Akiva. My time akamechayev l'she'avar. Why is it that Rabbi Akiva holds that when it comes to a shvua that you said in the past of achalti or lo achalti, why does he hold that you're chayev? Because the darish ribuye umiyute. Because Rabbi Akiva is doresh a ribuy and a miyut, a pasuk that has a large, broad inclusion, followed by a restrictive and exclusive miyut. Rabbi Nami darish ribuye v'miyute, and they both seem to agree on this. We'll soon see that's not so pashut, but they both hold of ribuy and miyut. Detanya, where do we know that each of them hold this? It's from a Mishnah by the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. Says the Gemara, I did a bris 2 weeks ago. We found out at the bris that the father of the baby never had a Pidyon Haben. This guy is like 35 years old, and he's going to have a Pidyon Haben. So the grandfather's like, do I have to put him on like a silver tray with like garlic and sugar? I'm like, it's okay. Go find a Kohen Miyuchas. I'll help you if you need. Call me. This guy's 35 years old. You have a mitzvah to do a Pidyon Haben your whole life. And he was Taka Yisrael, who was born to two Yisraelim, no miscarriages, no older sister, no older brother. Done. Easy peasy. No, not. Because the grandfather of the baby said, I heard about this commandment with the coins. Does it apply to my grandson? That's what he was asking me. He was asking me about the grandson. Yeah, I'm like, no, because he has an older sister, whatever I don't remember if it was C-section or older. I don't remember what the exception was. I said, but the rule is, and then when I said the rule, the father was like, that's me. I'm a firstborn to two Yisraelim. Both of my parents are Israelites. They're not in the, I'm like, well, get the boy on a tray. Let's go. So the problem is that if they don't use like a Kohen, like a real Kohen, and preferably a Kohen Miyuchas, it's a bracha levatala. You get real shilas. You have to really know. And like usually when you're doing these things, you want to bring like a Rabbi Zev Cohen. You want to bring like someone who's got like a real kahuna. You don't want to mess around. It's a mitzvah deraisa, like any. If you're just getting an aliyah and you think you're a Kohen, we'll give you an aliyah. But when you're dealing with a mitzvah deraisa, it's a whole nother level, whole nother playing field. So, anyways, in regards to this mitzvah, let's look at this my time, a third of the way down on Daled Amud Beis. My time of the Rebbe. Why does Rebbe hold what he holds? Oh, I skipped something. Sorry. Rebbe Nami Darish Ribui Mute Detanya. Rebbe Omer, Bekol Podin, Bechor Adam. You can do the padiyah with anything that has monetary value, chutz min hashtaros, except for paper. Let's just use the word check in our case. I don't know if that's actually true. It's a piece of paper that inherently has no value, but is representative of value. It's not currency. A check is not currency. It functions like currency, but a $100 bill and a check for $100 are not the same, right? The check is a delay to get the money. Cash is right now. Cash is king. So families say all the time, would you prefer cash or check? I'm like, cash. Zelle, actually. But after that, pay up with cash. So here, you cannot do shtaros. That was what Rebbe held. V'Rabbanan amrei b'chol podin b'chor adam chutz me'avadim ushtaros v'karkos. Okay, now we have to understand their shitas. My time of the Rebbe, why does Rebbe hold that you can do pidyon haben with anything of monetary value, with the exception of shtaros? Darish ribuye umiute. The pasuk says, Ufdu yomi ben chodesh, you should be podeh when he's a month old, riba, broad spectrum. Be'erkacha kesef chamesh shkalim, miet. Then the Torah says how to do the ribui. It needs to be in the value of 5 coins. Tifteh, you have to redeem chazav riba. Riba umiet v'riba. When you have broad and then limiting in broad, riba hakol, that's a super inclusive way to say that you are able to do pidyon haben with anything. I could take my phone, I could take my Gemara, I could take my anything that's expensive. That's what it's like basically $100 in silver, whatever the actual amount is, the 5 coins. Anything of value I can trade except for staros. My riba kol mili, I can really use anything. Umay miet, what's the only thing that's a miut? Miet staros. Why? Because it's literally not worth the paper it's printed on. You're saying that I'm going to give you $120 in silver and I wrote it up on a star. The star is a check. That's not value. The value is after you cash it in and get the coins. But for now, it's a zero, non-starter. The Rabbanan argue. The Rabbanan darshan differently. They don't use ribui miu to ribui. The Rabbanan darshe klale uprate. Ufuduyo mi ben chodesh klal. Be'erkecha kesef chamesh shkalim prat. Tifte chazaru klal. Klalu pratu klal. Iatadan ela ke'ena prat. Here, we look at the prat and we find common denominators with the prat. Mahaprat mafurash davar hamitaltel v'gufo mamon. Just like the coins are portable and they are of value, Af kol davar hamitaltel v'gufo mamon would count for pidyon haben. Yatsu karkosh and metaltalin. It breaks the rules. It has to be both. It has to be both metaltalin and gufo mamon. Karka is not metaltalin. Yatsu avadim shehu karkos, and therefore are also not metaltalin, even though obviously you can't move karka, but you can move a person, right? We don't care. They're hukshu lekarkos, and therefore they're done. And yatsu shtaros she'af al pisha metaltalin, they are portable, but in gufo mamon, they're not currency. It's a star toward currency, but therefore you cannot use any of those in regards to the world of pidyon haben. Now, just to step off of this for just a second, what we see is that a ribui, miut, and ribui is looser. Is looser. You can do pidyon haben with more things, according to Rebbe, because the only limit is shtaros. According to the next opinion, which uses klalu pradu klal, there are fewer things that you can use for pidyon haben, because yatsu karkos, shtaros, and shtaros, and avodim. So these are that's like a tangent asterisk on the world. I believe that rule is always true. In a previous Masechta, I said this. I remember saying this. I can't remember which way I said it, but I'm pretty sure this is the case because of how it's presenting over here. I remember in my head feeling that I understood it.
Yeah.
I don't feel that right now, but that's what the Gemara is saying. It's clear. I'm hoping it's true thematically. Yeah.
Consideration or
right. But what you do see. And on Shabbos, I was reading the introduction to Aryeh Kaplan's book called Bahir. The Bahir was one of the oldest Kabbalistic works out there, and I have a bunch of Aryeh Kaplan's books at home. So the Daf on Shabbos was relatively easy. So I read a book that wasn't a Gemara for like the first time in 6 months. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Leave me alone. Please give me an hour." So in there, he speaks about Rav Nechunya ben Hakaneh, who was seemingly the author of the Bahir. Rav Nechunya ben Hakaneh also authored Ana B'Koach, which each of the first letters is the 42-letter name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Careful, but it is a 42-letter name. And Rav Nechunya ben Hakaneh was so meticulous in how he extracted things from the Torah. His Talmud was Rabbi Shmuel, who wrote the Yud Gimel Midos Shatorah Dreshes Behen as a Mesorah from Rav Nechunya ben Hakaneh, because he was so stark. Nothing is left. It's like the Torah Tamima on steroids. Nothing is left to chance. Every word in Chumash was exactly drawn out perfectly. We have no idea what was going on in their heads. But Rabbi Shmuel left that Rebbe Talmud relationship. He's like, I know what to write. So I have in my siddur, my massive oversized siddur for the blind in there, I have there by Rabbi Shmuel, I have a little note there that says that we can't learn the Torah without the prism of Rabbi Shmuel, which is taka true. And we don't even understand the rules of Bichlal.
No, you explain the rules.
Yeah, just saying, it's right. But why did Rabbi Shmuel exclude Ribui, Miu to Ribui? So we're going to stop right here at Amalei Ravina because we're going to ask a kasha on this tomorrow. And Yirtzeh Hashem will pick up with Daf Hey tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.